Alright guys, welcome to VALORANT News. The World Championship in Paris has gone to crazy levels with big upset results already happening so far in this tournament. Demon1 confirms he is intending to knock G2 Esports out of the World Championship in their very next game when he plays again with DRG. Valin from G2 disagrees entirely with that assessment, reckons they're going to shut him down very easily indeed, but that might not be the case if they play in the same way that they did yesterday. What is going on with these North American teams? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. We have a lot to dive into today. We are going to begin here because the World Championship's gone pretty crazy. Of the 42 odd thousands prediction brackets, around about 24 are still remaining intact, and that will likely change very swiftly over the next few days. This is the map rotation changes we're expecting to see starting on the 14th of October. Ascent is going to be gone, Lotus is going to be on, and Pearl and Split are going to be back in. So, yeah, what did we think about this? Of course, the World Championship at that point will long be over. Will we see any changes to these maps in due course? Probably not, you know how it is. Look, I like Split. I'm happy that Split's coming back in. I'm not, too opposed to these changes, actually. I think that it makes some sense. Ascent, I do like it. I think it is excellent, but I don't mind seeing other maps in the pool. Not the biggest fan of Pearl, but that's what they're going to do. Now, there was some talk about, what about Breeze, right? Like, should Breeze be coming back? Why is Breeze not coming back? I'm a pretty big fan of Breeze, personally. Also, Fracture, right? Another map that could come back. But it is interesting, right? Like, they change the map pool all the time. Like, they really do. They switch it up almost every couple of months. The map pool's getting changed. And that's probably okay. But I would just like to see if they do bring other maps back in, that they make some changes. Because they've added lots of new maps, Sunsets around, Corrode around. They've got all these other maps, of course, Abyss, right? They've got so many maps in the pool nowadays, and yet they just seem to be, you can't have like 11 maps in the pool, you can have 7. So they are making changes on a very brief basis, and I don't know, in my opinion, I would like to see more changes made to existing maps rather than just creating new ones, but that's my opinion. Let's get into the drama though of yesterday's World Championship, because wow, things were going kind of wild. And I do feel bad for DRG here, and just for the Chinese teams in general, because I don't know how it was possible for both of the Chinese teams that have played, at least, well, all of the Chinese teams that have played so far, to somehow find a way to throw away major advantages when the opportunity presented itself. Bilibili Gaming, of course, yet to play, but DRG, Demon1, nice little 1v1 there against Meteor, takes the round. Nice advantage for DRG in this situation against T1. Then they lose the game 1, then the game 2, it goes to overtime, and I mean, this is just such, I mean, how do you lose this situation? Unfortunately for DRG, but Meteor and Stacks, they go absolutely huge when it matters here, and yeah, somehow they win this round to take it 16-14. Obviously XLG were the other team who played Paper X. It's not like they really had a big advantage that they squandered, but it was certainly true for Edward Gaming against NRG, and it was certainly true in this series as well. It was cool to see Demon1 back, right? I think he did a very respectable job, and T1, I like, they've obviously made a change. They brought in DH. He's done pretty well so far. He was a key reason, I think, why they ended up winning this series. But the Lotus 15-13, DRG's pick. They had a good chance, right? It was 12-10. I mean, it was even before that 11-8. They then lost 4 of the next 5 rounds. They lost the overtime. And to the credit of DRG, mentally, they remained quite resilient. They had a very strong second half to even make the comeback possible, but then they lost in the end. So brutal way to lose. 13-15, 14-16. T1 advance. As I said yesterday, I thought maybe this was the series, because we know that XLG, they may well bomb out of Group A, and if they do, then DRG just need to win a series in order to guarantee that they stay around in the VCT next year, because both of those teams making the World Championship means that one of them is going to have to fight down an Ascension to make their way back in and effectively beat the Ascension winner in China, which could even feature Simon, who knows. But that's the big drama there. But in addition to DRG, and we'll get back to them in a second, there was also this, according to Meteor, from T1. Now, we've not seen seen this from any other players yet, but apparently after the T1 match was over and they won it, he went live on Soup, so legendary organisation, they run those tournaments at the end of every year. He said the tech pauses happened because the PCs were trash. Now, this is actually crazy if this is true, and I want to wait for other players to say something similar. I've not seen, I don't think, anything else as of yet on this, because we know that there was all this drama in Europe this year, changing out the PCs, making the PCs better, because Europe, they just had these terrible old school PCs. Apparently they're back for the World Championship, no less. And he says the reason DH was just standing still here was because he literally got blue screened and crashed. After that, he kept crashing, couldn't log in, had a bunch of other issues. The biggest tournament still running on these toaster spec PCs. And he said too many ridiculous things happened. The Lotus Tech pause, my PC was lagging, we called a pause. Tournament staff told me to just keep playing with the FPS stats I had on. My PC was cutting out constantly, but I still had to play, he says. Then the second pause was when Dongo suddenly crashed in the middle of the round. It left Demon1 on their side. We had 3 players alive, but suddenly his screen went blue. He got a blue screen, rebooted, tried to log back in, but it wouldn't log back in. So it was an absolute nightmare. We kept pausing after every round. It was tough, couldn't focus at all. The PCs just kept cutting out. And I think, people would have seen the tech pauses, probably say, yeah, this seems plausible. But I don't know what's going on, right? Tens, it's time to do a tweet. It's time to put out a tweet and say, look, how are Riot, this small indie company, cooking up an absolute disaster class again? Because if this continues, this is going to be a talking point for the rest of the tournament. This is kind of the first that we've heard talked about it, but it is absolutely going to be a factor in the rest of the conversation. Now, G2, they were cooking up some banging content going into the World Championship. Here we go. Only the fearless can be champions. Like, we're trying to put on an absolute masterpiece, and yeah, not gonna lie, this content is pretty spectacular, but it might make sense to win a series, because they said to Sentinels the other day, losing to Mimier is crazy, losing to teams that start with a G, and Sentinels, of course, they went down just the other day, but last night, the Baguette boys were out in force, and G2 got beat by Team Heretics. Now, they didn't play very well. I think Heretics were very impressive, and we know what Heretics can do, right? So let's not deny that these guys won the Esports World Cup not that long ago. But G2, given their level, given their expectation, given the fact that they came into this tournament outside of Paper X effectively as the favourites, lovely 1v3 here from Leaf against Team Heretics to keep them alive. But in the end, it did not matter, because they lost the Corrode 13-10 after an 8-4 side on the defense. Team Heretics then took over on the second side. Jorgamo got absolutely beat up basically by Miniboo on the duelist role, and the same then happened pretty much on the Lotus, especially after G2 started out 6-0, and Heretics closed this one out without even needing the third map on the Haven. So understandably, loads of reaction to this one from everyone, because a Sentinel says, that was interesting, you guys were clowning on us, and you play your first game of the tournament as one of the big favourites for the entire event, and you go down to a European team, right? So G2 maybe were kind of asking for it, but there's loads of interesting things here. It does probably say a fair bit about the current state of the Americas. Are NRG the last hope from the Americas this event? Could MIBR do some damage today? We'll see how that looks in a second. But Sentinels and G2, the two teams expected to be carrying the flag for America, as it were, they go down in the first round in both of their respective games to Giant X, and then of course to Team Heretics in pretty unexpected fashion in both regards. Is it because the Americas this year was just nowhere near competitive enough? G2, Sentinels, they may have been the best team, but maybe the best team of a bad bunch. You could argue that G2, they turn up every week and they beat up on American, North American teams, or just from the Americas in general, that are just not very good. They let G2 walk all over them, and then they turn up internationally and things change very dramatically. Not to say that it's over for G2 yet, as it's not over for Sentinels. As Valen says, we tossed that one, but all good. We're still making the playoffs. Next game against DRG, and I still would back G2 to make it to the playoffs. I still think they will. And if they do, then they're still going to be in a perfectly okay spot. But a serious wake-up call in many regards today, and as a result of that, there are questions about their next series, because DRG, their next game, will be against G2 Esports, and Demon1 says, hello there, right? So, like, let's see how this one goes, because this would be quite the storyline. Demon1 with the opportunity to sub in for Dragon Ranger Gaming. Did a very respectable job, I thought, against T1. I do think G2 are a different challenge, and I think this will be a serious challenge. The game happens in about 5 days' time, but they will have that time to prepare for G2 Esports and what they're going to do from then. Now, G2, not so convinced Demon1 stands a chance. I'll play this clip just at the end of the video, but Valen was asked the question, okay, you guys play DRG next. What do you think about that? And Valen goes, look, he does not stand a chance. We will be wiping these guys out, but could these be famous last words, right? G2 were talking a big game even going into this championship. They turn up. It's obviously not gone to plan so far. Now they're saying that, oh, DRG pose no threat to us. Well, that could backfire quite spectacularly. So, for G2's perspective, if they do beat Dragon Ranger Gaming, I would expect them to play T1. You know, they could have a Heretics rematch, possible, but I'm expecting Heretics to beat T1 here, in which case it'll be a potential T1 G2 decider game, which I would back G2 to win. So I don't think it's over yet for G2 fans, but it's obviously not the start they would have wanted, of course, and Demon1 has the opportunity to do something very entertaining indeed. The final group play gets underway today. Bilibili, MIBR, and then RRQ Fnatic. Both of these games pretty interesting to call. I think I'll take Bilibili and maybe Fnatic. I'm not really so sure. I think that RRQ could easily win this and win the group. But I think Fnatic will probably be considered the favourites by many, but they've not impressed me in recent weeks, that is for sure. So today is going to be fascinating as ever. The last few days have thrown up some serious upsets and some serious overtime games, and if that happens again, then more than likely all of anyone's bracket predictions will be done and dusted by the end of the day. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
For Balin, what do you say for the next rival, Demon1?
He doesn't stand a chance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.